Coming up, Taylor drops out, or does he? Is Roberts on the ropes, and will Kansans elect their first independent party candidate for U.S. Senate in the state's history? Also this week, why city aviation officials say it's finally time to put the International in Kansas City International Airport. Plus, is there a job change in the works for Claire McCaskill? How does Governor McCaskill sound? Hello, I'm Nick Haynes, and good to have you with us again on the program that goes beyond the soundbite and takes you behind the headlines, making news in Kansas City, dissecting the week's news on both sides of state lines. Star political columnist and the host of Up to Date on KCUR-FM, Steve Kraske. From behind the microphone at News Radio 98.1 FM, KMBZ, Scott Parks. Star City Hall reporter Lynn Horsley, and columnist, blogger, and Kansas City Star political reporter Dave Helling. In a political shockwave making national news this week, the Democratic candidate in the race against Kansas United States Senator Pat Roberts abruptly drops out. But some political watchers say the unexpected move by Chad Taylor, the Shawnee County District Attorney, could actually improve Democrats' goal of ousting Roberts because it'll let independent candidate Greg Orman challenge the incumbent Republican head-on in November. If it sounds implausible, consider this. Despite the fact that 30% of voters still have not heard of the well-resourced Olathe businessman, a recent public policy polling survey shows that in a one-on-one matchup, Orman would beat Roberts by 10 percentage points. But is the Roberts campaign in a state of panic this week, Steve Kraske?
Well, there's a little bit of that going on here, Nick. The campaign manager, Leroy Towns, longtime Kansan, he's been with Pat Roberts for 40 years. He's out. And certainly inside that campaign, as you watch the machinations on the other side, the Democrat dropping out of the race, this new thinking that suddenly that would make Roberts way more vulnerable in a one-on-one duel with Greg Orman. There has to be a lot of panic there. Now, having said that, as we sit here this morning, it appears that the Democrat, Chad Taylor, is going to remain on the ballot. The situation is still very much in flux, pending a court challenge. Depending on how that shakes out, if Taylor's still on the ballot, that improves Pat Roberts' stock.
Can you help us understand, though, why did Chad Taylor decide to actually leave the race, though, first of all, Dave Helling, when he emphatically said in your own story earlier in the week, I am definitely not leaving this race?
Right. He said that for weeks to other reporters. He told me last week we explored it at length, and he said because there had been rumors for weeks that Democrats were anxious to get Chad Taylor out of the race because they thought Greg Orman would have a better chance in the state against Pat Roberts. And he said, no, I'm in, repeatedly. So we don't, and he hasn't come out yet, Nick, and said, okay, this is why I changed my mind. There is evidence that Claire McCaskill and other people had a chance to talk to him, but we still don't know whether, some light went off in the last hours in which he said, you know what, maybe the better part of valor is to step away. Chad Taylor billboards went up over the weekend. Chad Taylor was tweeting as early or as late as Wednesday, come join me at the State Fair for the debate, which is Saturday. So something happened. We don't know precisely what it is, and we don't know precisely the outcome yet. The calculus, I think, was Greg Orman has a better chance against Pat Roberts than Chad Taylor. Chad, you need to step aside.
Well, I mean, let's not discount the fact that there was probably the possibility, at least, that he just took one for the team. You know, get out of this Senate race now. Chad Taylor clearly has a political future for himself, but get out of this race right now. You cannot win. But why don't you run for the U.S. House in a couple of years, and we'll really get behind you then, because there was no real evidence that the Democrats, at least nationally, were willing to come in and put money behind Chad Taylor. But, hey, why don't you wait a couple of years? You're young, you're ambitious, you look good on TV, and we'll get behind you 100% for the U.S. House.
Now, he withdraws from the race, but now we're told by the Secretary of State, Chris Kobach, no, you haven't done it properly. You haven't met the legal requirements to actually leave the race. But he is an attorney. How did that actually happen, Steve?
You know, we don't know, and this is absolutely stunning to me, Nick, considering that this is not only important in terms of a Kansas political race, this race could very much determine which party controls the U.S. Senate nationally. And here we have Chad Taylor dropping out at the last minute on deadline day. Apparently, at least Republicans saying, Chris Kobach saying he didn't fill out the form correctly, didn't say that what his incapacity was, and that failure means Republicans, his name will remain on the ballot. If Taylor really wants to get out, he's going to take one for the team. To not have made sure he crossed his T's and dotted his I's is breathtaking, given the gravity of this decision and the consequences that could fall out as a result of it.
So is it possible then for Greg Orman to actually win this race if Chad Taylor's name is still on the ballot, Dave Helling?
Well, yes, it's possible that he could win with or without Chad Taylor on the ballot. The likelihood is greater if it's perceived as a one race with Pat Roberts. But we should also pay some attention to the several ironies, Nick, in this situation. Greg Orman is running as an independent. He has not said whether he will caucus with the Democrats or the Republicans if he's elected.
Didn't he just say that he will caucus with whoever is the majority?
Well, he's sort of hedged on that, but maybe if it's 50-50, I'll have a bargaining chip. The reality is that if Taylor gets out and Orman wins, it's possible Kansans will simply replace Pat Roberts, a Republican, with Greg Orman, who would caucus with the Republicans. So there are an extraordinary amount and almost a unique amount of unanswered questions, Nick, in this race. And there are about 8 weeks to go before Election Day. So reporters across the state will have a real responsibility to sort of flesh out Greg Orman, help us understand what he's about and what he offers in lieu of Pat Roberts.
But I want to ask this question. We got a lot of other issues to tackle, but what do we actually know about this man, Greg Orman? He's certainly got the funding to be running highly produced television ads like this one. Where is he getting his money? What's the source of his own wealth? Do we know any of those questions?
Well, yeah, sure. We know some things about him, not a lot. He's a graduate of Princeton. He got a business degree. He founded an energy-efficient lighting company, sold it to KCP&L, ended up working as a manager there for a while. Then in 2004, Nick, he founded his own business services firm. Clearly has been very successful business-wise. He's raised $670,000, which sounds like a lot. It pales in comparison to Pat Roberts' $4.7 million. Most of Orman's money coming from outside the state, but most of Roberts' money coming from outside the state. And clearly, as Dave suggests here, he has sort of signaled in both directions. He favors some traditionally Democratic stands. He's pro-abortion, for instance, pro-abortion rights. He favors some traditionally Republican issues. He opposes Obamacare, for instance. It'll take a few weeks to sort of flesh him out some more. We have a basic outline of who he is. A lot more questions.
But it's one thing for people to be unhappy with Pat Roberts, saying he's too old. Was he really living in Kansas? But quite another thing, though, Scott, to look at somebody who they don't know much about, like Greg Orman.
And he doesn't have a lot of time to introduce himself to the electorate. I think going into November, this is going to be an election that's much more whether or not you like Pat Roberts than whether or not you like Greg Orman. And Greg Orman has to be very careful here. Democrats are more likely than not to vote for him, assuming that they go to the polls now without a candidate on their ballot. But he's got to be careful not to court them, because then the moderate Republicans that may be inclined to go with Greg Orman are going to say, what am I really voting for here? And they'll go back to Pat Roberts.
Yeah. We should keep in mind some of the politics beyond just this race. First of all, I think Democrats will go to the polls because Paul Davis and Sam Brownback are locked in an enormously tight and important contest in the state. Plus, keep in mind that even if Pat Roberts wins in Kansas, Nick, the Republican Party is furious that it is going to have to spend hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of dollars to protect his seat, given the current climate, when this should have been a safe seat for a Republican, and it should have been a victory lap for Pat Roberts. Now they're bringing in new people, they're spending hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of dollars, and they're having to do the same thing with Sam Brownback. It's astonishing as we sit here 8 weeks before Election Day that Sam Brownback and Pat Roberts are behind in Kansas in 2014. That's an astonishing story we should keep our eyes on.
It is astonishing, and if Scott is right, if this election turns out to be a referendum on Pat Roberts is in trouble. And what Dave just said is so true. What's going to happen now is the spending of millions of dollars. Patton's army is coming through Kansas to re-elect Pat Roberts here. No expense will be overlooked here to make sure that happens and to make this race anything but a referendum on Pat Roberts.
So we're going to be seeing an awful lot of campaign commercials there already. Coming up next on Week in Review, putting the International in Kansas City International Airport for a decade or more. KCI has had one daily flight to Toronto, Canada, plus limited service to Mexico in the tourist season. And for years, industry watchers have assumed that that was all we could get. But now Kansas City aviation officials say they're on a concerted quest to bring flights from London, Paris, and Frankfurt to KCI. But if it's so easy, why isn't that happening right now, Lynn Horsley?
Well, because there's a lot of competition, first of all. Let's back up a little bit. There's a fairly new aircraft, this Boeing Dreamliner 787, that carries fewer passengers, a couple of hundred, instead of these giant international airplanes. And so that makes it more economical and more feasible for second-tier airports like KCI to offer direct flights to Europe. There are other cities that are certainly going after this. The people, I think, sat up and took notice when Austin, Texas, got a direct flight to London, a daily flight to London earlier this year, and it's doing quite well. And Austin is not a hub airport. Everybody always thought you had to have a hub airport. So now Columbus, Ohio is trying for it. I guess Rhode Island just this week announced a direct flight to Frankfurt. So these are airports that never thought they could get direct service to Europe. And there is a market. I mean, Kansas City apparently sends about 300 people a day to Europe now, but it's through, you know, the two coasts.
You wrote the story on it this week, and I was looking at some of the comments, and some people thinking, "Oh, is this a ruse again to get this single terminal, big billion-dollar makeover there at the airport?" But is it really that they're not actually talking about that you have to have this massive makeover at the airport to make this happen?
No, it would certainly be easier if we had a new terminal that was custom designed and had, a custom designed customs area. But they insist they would make it work. Kansas City Airport has adapted over 40 years, and they've accommodated all different kinds of mergers and airline changes. So if they can get international flights, they'll make it work with the current configuration.
But is any airline saying that they are interested in coming here?
No, and this is not a short-term deal. In fact, the aviation department says they're working even more aggressively to get direct flights to, say, Miami or Raleigh-Durham. Direct domestic flights are their primary aim. But as long as this possibility of going to Europe is available, they're going to pursue it, and especially since they're in competition with other airports.
Steve.
You know, folks in Kansas City need to wrap their arms around the idea, Nick, that there is some capacity and there's some interest here in international flights. We're the 30th largest metropolitan area in the country, as Lynn Story pointed out, but we rank 62nd nationally when it comes to the frequency of international flights. That begins to speak to the unused capacity here locally for folks who want these flights and want to get out of Dodge.
Having said that, one of the struggles that KCI has faced throughout its lifetime is trying to decide whether it's fish or fowl. Is it a regional hub? Is it an international? I mean, the original idea was to have flights around the world. This would be
with TWA
and all that,
yeah.
Supersonic transport at one point. And so, and the airport has to make that decision with an industry that changes almost monthly. I mean, the needs of the airline industry change because of changing patterns, travel patterns, costs, fuel costs. I think we should tip our cap a little bit to the folks who work out at the airport because they're trying to manage a very fluid business to meet needs that are there, anticipate needs that may be coming down the pike, unrelated to whether or not it should be 3 terminals or 1.
Given that the president is in Wales currently, might we be expecting, and he said everybody needs to visit Wales, he just said that this week, might we be having direct flights from KCI to Wales?
Well, that is the goal,
in
is
the
to get
upcoming
you home,
future.
Nick.
Well, thank you, Lynn. Knowing what the priorities are. Next on Week in Review, could you end up paying for Ferguson? This week, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder making news when he announces a broad civil rights investigation of the police department in Ferguson. Meanwhile, it's revealed that the cost of extra policing could fall on you, and it's not cheap. The chief operating officer for St. Louis County figures the total tab for all bolstered security at up to $6 million, and they're asking for the state and federal government to help. The St. Louis police chief tells the St. Louis Post-Dispatch that the state should expect a bill for $750,000. The cost of his department alone to supply manpower in Ferguson. It's still unclear how much taxpayers will end up paying for the Missouri National Guard's week-long presence in the town. Is this one of the issues that will be discussed when Missouri lawmakers return to Jefferson City for their annual veto session next week, Steve?
I'm not sure it will be. I think Governor Nixon might end up dealing with this in his next budget that comes out next year. Local officials still sort of tabulating the cost of what this local police extra presence in Ferguson might run. They have other and bigger issues in Jeff City to deal with.
And what are those for next week?
Well, overriding Governor Nixon's record 33 vetoes, for one thing, vetoing tax breaks for all kinds of businesses, and a very large tax cut that he once again vetoed this year. Lawmakers, Republicans, very much primed to override him on a number of those issues. It's going to be a pretty good showdown in Jeff City next week.
And we should keep in mind that Governor Nixon enters the veto session in the weakest position he's probably ever been in as governor because of Ferguson, because of the criticism of his response, because his own reactions, because of what Republicans think they can do in terms of making it an issue, and money is part of that. It would not be surprising to see several vetoes overridden precisely because of that reason. He's just not in a very strong position right now.
We head back over to Kansas now, where the race for governor is in full swing. Governor Sam Brownback is out with a brand new ad this week touting his strong success in cutting welfare rolls and dramatically boosting jobs. But are the claims true?
Since 2011, Kansas welfare rolls have been cut in half. In half. Because more people than ever in history are working in Kansas.
The way out of poverty is not just to get a pittance from the government. Way out of poverty is what you taught us. It's education, it's work, it's family structure.
We've got over 50,000 new private sector jobs.
That's the way out of poverty. The sun is shining in Kansas, and don't let anybody tell you any different.
Dave Helling, when you were in commercial TV, you were known for all of your truth-checking of political ads. Can we do a little bit of this on these ads
here? The jobs record is true.
Okay. Did we cut the welfare rolls in half?
Yeah, but in part because of the recovery of the economy and not because of any specific legislative steps that were taken.
Well, he kicked people off of welfare, just to be clear. He trimmed the welfare rolls very intentionally, and there's absolutely no indication that there's a link between that action and folks who've been kicked off welfare and their ability to find new jobs. Now, job creation in Kansas has lagged behind neighboring states, so keep it all in perspective here a little bit.
Yeah, but the other thing to keep in mind is when we're looking at the Brownback race, and I do have a story about this coming up, the amount of outside money coming into Kansas, Nick, is astonishing. Already, outside ads worth almost $3 million have been aired in that race. That's more than the two campaigns have spent combined. So there will be an onslaught of ads like this between now and election day.
Brownback's Democratic opponent Paul Davis launches his first TV ad of the fall campaign this week and abruptly takes it down. Why at issue is the actor who appears with Davis throughout the 30-second spot. The Brownback campaign releases police reports showing the actor had been caught up in a male prostitution ring, was suspended from his high school teaching job for inappropriate conduct with a male exchange student, and banned from the Boy Scouts. Clay Barker, executive director of the Kansas Republican Party, said his inclusion in the first campaign advertisement put forward by Davis should prompt skepticism in the minds of voters. The use of an actor with this sort of background raises serious questions about Paul Davis's judgment and what kind of people he would surround himself with if elected. The Davis campaign must have been sufficiently worried about this, though. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken the ad down, would they, Scott?
I do take a little bit of issue with the argument that this calls into question his judgment. If anything, it calls into question the background checks that his campaign does on the people that they put in their commercials, especially in such a visible role. But the whole point that we're sitting here, the 4 or 5 of us sitting here, talking about the sexual indiscretions of a voice actor in a Paul Davis commercial only reinforces, I think, for the voting public what they hate about the months between August and November on any given election year, where it stops becoming about, and maybe in my little world of unicorns and rainbows, it would be about the issues and candidates would not have to be truth checked by Dave Helling. But the fact that we're talking about this is why people get so sick of politics.
And isn't this, though, just the beginning, though, Dave? Because Paul Davis has just left Brownback to his own devices at this point. Let him come out front and say all the things he wants to do. He has not been scrutinized.
Right, and I've written that story that he hasn't been perhaps as visible as he needs to be between now and Election Day. You know, earlier Scott talked about anybody but Roberts. There isn't anybody but Brownback, you know, part of the equation here. But Paul Davis does have to step forward and say something. Having said that, you know, having looked at thousands of ads over the years, mistakes like the one that Paul Davis made are relatively common, where you put somebody in an ad whose story doesn't really check out. You know, used to be a woman would say, I did X, Y, and Z, and you'd call, who is that woman? Well, she's really an actress from Los Angeles, and it's not, didn't live in Missouri or whatever. That happens more than people know. There's a lot of artifice in political advertising. So it was a minor ding to Paul Davis, and really a bad ding out of the gate, but in the long term, probably not major damage.
We go back to Kansas City, which wants jobs and good paying ones, but should the city always be dishing out big tax breaks to get them? Backers of a proposed biotech office park in South Kansas City are preparing to seek up to 25 years of property tax breaks on a massive project that would be bigger than Sprint's headquarters or Corporate Woods in Overland Park. It's called Oxford on the Blue, and it is planned for space north of Cerner's new $4 billion office complex at the site of the old Bannister Mall. The Kansas City Star reports that the city's Planning, Zoning and Economic Development Committee is set to consider the tax breaks next week. Oxford on the Blue advocates said the tax breaks are needed to bring research firms, clinical trial facilities and similar biotech operations to the site, but critics argue subsidies are supposed to be awarded to blighted areas. This is green space with Cerner going in across the street. How is that blighted, Lynn Horsley?
Well, it's an undeveloped area that is in need of development that sometimes translates into blighted in Kansas City, especially when you're competing with Johnson County. But this is a very important question. They did give massive tax breaks to Cerner, and that was with this promise of, I think, 16,000 jobs. When is enough enough? I think proponents of Oxford on the Blue say this will create synergy with Cerner, and it would be almost like a research triangle, something like in North Carolina. It could really be transformative, not only for South Kansas City, but for the whole city. It is worth it. And these are tax abatements. Keep in mind, this is not the city selling debt. These would not be borrowing money that the taxpayers would have to guarantee if the project doesn't succeed.
But we have huge amounts of office space downtown that is vacant. Why isn't there more efforts made to provide incentives there? Why do we have to be providing incentives in basically green space in South Kansas City?
Well, Nick, you're sort of outlining the long-standing controversy about TIF. You know, the developers are saying, we want to do this project here. This means all these jobs, all these great benefits for your city, but we're not going to do it unless you give us these tax breaks. You look at members of the city council, they're on the hook here, having to decide one way or the other. What would you do as a council member? This is a huge boon for South Kansas City, as Lynn just pointed out, and this is the issue with TIF. It probably isn't the best project in some respects, but still, it brings a lot of benefits.
Well, and you have to pay to play, you know, and I think tax increment financing in Kansas City, as Steve and Lynn noted, I mean, has been incredibly controversial over many years. But do you want all of these jobs? And Lynn wrote earlier this week, there isn't a lot of tax money coming out of this green space to begin with, and there is an expiration date on these tax breaks. I think you indicated in the paper this week, 10 years
100%.
and then 15 years at what, 50%?
Yes,
I think it was. So you're going to get some tax money out of this property, at least more. You know, if you can wait a decade, which is not really that long. Compared to what you're getting out of it now. I mean, look at the Kansas Speedway. I mean, what if the state legislature in Kansas had not issued those STAR bonds for some of those projects out there? And now they're smiling all the way to the bank right now with that project out there at the Legends.
Well, this is speculative, though, and you do raise a good point. I think this is why Russ Johnson, the councilman, is most outspoken against these tax breaks. He would like to see these companies come downtown, and he says that's where they need to direct the incentives. You know, I don't know that they feel like they can assemble all of these biotech firms and researchers the way they want to downtown, whereas they've assembled this land and they could build this out at the pace they want to in South Kansas City.
While Kansas Cityans were getting to grips with the name change last week for one of their favorite barbecue joints, Kansas City officials were announcing the design and name for Kansas City's new streetcar line after the awarding of an $80,000 contract. This is what the city got for its money. London has its tube, Chicago the L. Is it okay that Kansas City simply chooses to call its new system the Kansas City Streetcar Line?
Well, the most controversy I heard is that people think that logo looks like a bug or a Weber grill, and not like a streetcar. That's sort of the universal symbol for a streetcar. That's why it was chosen.
The universal symbol for Kansas City is a Weber grill, because obviously barbecue is such a big deal.
And you know, as far as the $80,000 contract, that pays for a lot more than just this logo. This group has helped design the streetcar colors. They're going to help design the wraps around the streetcar. They're helping to design the streetcar stops. It's a whole branding campaign and marketing campaign. So it's not just the choice of the name and the logo.
Scott.
Between this really boring name and McDonald's, I'm loving it. I've got to get into the branding business because I can do better than that.
All righty. Could Claire McCaskill be the next governor of Missouri? Could the Missouri senator be the first woman in the Show Me State's top job? According to a column in this week's Kansas City Star, Steve Kraske says that McCaskill is dropping hints all over the state. What are those hints, Steve?
Well, she gave broadcast interview after broadcast interview nationally and locally, Nick, talking about Ferguson, and then she followed it up with a very sort of scathing critique of Governor Jay Nixon, saying he didn't have enough African Americans on his cabinet. You know, on one level, Nick, she was just doing her job, being present at a very difficult time over in Ferguson. But on another level, a lot of folks looked at that and thought she was showing the state if she was governor, this is how she would handle the job. And a lot of folks thought she did a pretty good job.
Can you see that happening, Scott?
Yes, because I've known many politicians in my life. I've known few with more ambition and drive than Claire McCaskill. And I think sometimes in political life, she's always looking for that next step. And this would be presumably the next step for her.
So very quickly, you've got to think about Chris Koster. He's running for governor, and he's already got a couple of $1 million in the bank. That has to be fixed if she's going to come back.
And that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.